Okay, we're good? We're live? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening, Port Washington. Welcome to AGATE's annual Meet the Candidates Night. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Like last year, we're virtual this year, obviously, but we hope soon to return to the Weber Library where we usually hold it. For Spanish speakers, we have a dial-in number, and I'm going to put it in the chat for you. It's 720-740-9736. with access code 1781435. So for Spanish speakers, you can access a Spanish translation at that number, which is also on the district homepage. So I wanted to make that announcement first. So I'll say we're in the unique position this year of having our president, Nanette, run for the school board. Nanette Melconian has not been involved in any way in the planning of this, and none of the candidates have any knowledge of any of the questions. I mean, unless I guess they hacked into the email, but I'm going to assume that didn't happen. AGATE is, as always, dedicated to hosting a fair and impartial event to educate the community. Very briefly, what is AGATE? AGATE is a homeschool association that works with parents, teachers, administrators, and other organizations to advocate for the unique needs of diverse, gifted students and other advanced learners from pre-K through graduation. For more information on our annual events like Meet the Graduates, the Enrichment Fair, our guest speakers, our scholarships for Schreiber seniors, and our Connecting Over coffee sessions, please visit our website, agatepw.com. And the BOE election, I wanted to say, is on May 18th at Weber Middle School, and residents can vote yes or no on the budget and can vote for any three of the candidates here for a 3-year term. During tonight's forum, I'm going to ask the candidates a representative sampling of questions, and we have Larry's cat, which is great, a representative sampling of questions, which were emailed to us by members of the community, and I wanted to thank everyone for all their questions. We condensed them when we got a few on the same topic, which happened a lot. Given the number of candidates and the timing, we want to kind of keep it tight and end by 9 because we know everyone has Zoom fatigue these days. We will try to reserve some time at the end for questions that we get during the event. So if you'd like to email questions to us during the event, please do that. Please make sure they're a question that each of the candidates can answer. And I'm going to put the email address in the chat. It's agatecandidatesnight@gmail.com. So we'll try to get to 1 or 2, but like I said, we have a lot of candidates and we want to have, a full discussion tonight. So the format will be 2 minutes for each candidate's opening statement, 2 minutes to respond to each question, and 1 minute for a closing remarks at the end. And we have our board member, Ben Lawrence here, who is our timer, and she's going to hold up a sign with a 30-second warning and then a stop. And we ask that you finish up then when you see Ben stop or before that. And we're going to go in alphabetical order by last name to begin, and then I'm just going to go down the list and start with the next person and then the next person in a circle alphabetically for the questions, just to keep it interesting. So I wanted to start with Dr. Block for the opening statements because you are the first alphabetical last name. So Dr. Block, welcome, and why are you running for Board of Education?
So thank you. I want to thank AGATE for holding this and for all the work that you do improving education for Port Washington students in the community. And I hope we will not discuss or mention the fact that my wife Lauren was in PEP at Guggenheim in the 80s and I was not. My name's Adam Block. I was born and raised in Port Washington. My parents live here. My wife Lauren was born and raised here. She's a physician at Northwell. She treats some of you and works with others. I have 3 kids in Salem School, Elise and Brandon, who are twins in 3rd grade, and Jordan, who's in kindergarten. I'm a teacher of public health, and I started a local business, Port Skis, renting skis to kids. I ran for Board of Education last year because many parents and I wanted a better education for our kids last spring. Everyone with children in the district understands what parents went through managing online education with their kids for months. The back-to-school decisions of August drove many parents to tears. We called, we emailed, we wrote letters to the Board of Education that went unanswered. So Justin Renna, Adam Smith, and I, along with hundreds of other parents and kids, held a rally that was televised on ABC News. That is what it took to get acknowledged with the 3 incumbents on the board. They ignored the letter of 40 Port Washington parents who were frontline healthcare workers who knew that schools were the safest place for young kids. One current board member even said that he proudly ignored 1,000 parents who signed a petition because they were privileged kids. And another board member said that last year, She responded to only 150 emails out of thousands, what must have been thousands. That's 3 emails a week during a pandemic in a school district of 5,000 plus kids. After 3 years of ignoring the community, they now serve, the incumbents want your vote because they say you need experience to do the job. That is not the kind of experience that the people of Port Washington need. They want somebody that will care and listen, that doesn't shut down meetings early. They want somebody that responds when they ask for help, and want somebody that understands the schools because they have kids going to the schools every day. I built trust in the community the last 13 months, and I'll focus on a plan for equitable education moving forward. I look forward to telling you my ideas, including improving curriculum and improving excellence and getting working families in this community some better after-school care options. I ask for your vote. Remember, you have 3 votes this year. I ask you to vote for Adam Block.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Greenstein.
Okay, well, let me unmute because, I am unmuted. Thank you to AGATE for hosting this event. AGATE plays an important role in advocating for all of the students in the district. It's always been one of my favorite events because the questions are focused and thoughtful and are on topics that are important. I'd like to thank my colleagues for joining me, and most of all, to thank the audience and the voters, because local elections truly are democracy at work. Recently, some candidates have been misleading the community about the actions that the district took in returning all the students who wanted to our elementary schools. It was anything but abrupt. There were many, many meetings conducted by the district with the educators and health professionals. Spreading misinformation is not the behavior we should expect for somebody who seeks to be a board trustee and is not behavior in keeping with being a board trustee. My name is Larry Greenstein, and I've served the people and students of Port Washington for almost 2 decades. First as president of SEPTA, the Special Ed PTA, and since 2005 as a member of the Board of Education. Last year, I was elected by the Boards of Education of Nassau County to join the board of Nassau BOCES, where I advocate for all the students in Nassau County. I am also Secretary Treasurer and incoming Vice President of the Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association, where I network with colleagues from all over Long Island. I work with school boards across the state and across the country to advocate for policies and funding strongly to help our students and our district. As a member of the legislative task force, I was part of the effort that garnered Port Washington one of the highest percentages increase in foundation aid in Nassau. I've worked with hundreds of school board members over my career, and this is what stands out. The worst quality a board member can have is hubris. The best board members know that they do not have all the answers. They look at data and hear from all sides. Education is a collaborative effort, and everybody's needs must be respected, not just the loudest. A good board member works with all their colleagues and the superintendent to carefully thread the needle to support all learners as a whole. If you believe in our mission of providing quality education for all the students, one that fosters a love of learning, acceptance of differing viewpoints, and an understanding of the role in the community, I ask for your vote. Go with the people who know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Melconian, you're next. No, I am wrong, right? I'm wrong. No, Ms. Johnson is next. See that Justin not being here messed up my list and I read it wrong. Ms. Johnson, you're next.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, AGATE, for hosting. My family and friends ask, after 9 years and the nonstop pace on the board over the last 15 months, why are you running? The answer is simple. In this unprecedented time of COVID, experienced, steady leadership is critical. It appears that we're turning the corner, but it is now that the real work must continue. It will take trustees with deep knowledge of the district and board process to lead us forward to set district goals and make policies that consider the instructional and emotional needs of all students. We need trustees that represent all stakeholders. My 3 children went through our schools and had very different needs. I've had 2 PEP students and a student who struggled, one who excelled at everything and took every advanced class, one who did well, but decided not to turn down the creative writing program because she was already in research, and one who needed the STEP program and ultimately an out-of-district placement. All 3 are successful young adults, although my 20-year-old is a college sophomore, and she has been going through remote instruction since last March, so I know what that's like too. My three kids have given me invaluable insight into the needs of different types of learners. Among so many things that I'm proud of as a trustee, we facilitated the passage of the 2015 bond, oversaw the introduction of programs at the elementary level that ensure consistency, continue to improve communication. And by the way, that was 150 letters during a few-week period where we had half of the people asking for hybrid and the other half insisting on coming back in, and another group who said, let's just go remote. I was talking about 2 weeks, not the whole year. Another thing that we did is we transformed this district into a one-to-one district, including devices and Wi-Fi access for all. I also championed our partnerships with NYU's Innovations in Equity and Social Change and the Vision and Mission Task Force. I'm on the team expanding the Ruler program. We also steered the district through the last 15 months, and even our opponents agree that since October, instruction has been a success. I'm asking for your vote because we need the experience, perspective, and passion for all students and stakeholders.
Thank you.
Now more than ever.
Thank you. Okay, now Ms. Melconian, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Nanette Melconian. Thank you to AGATE for the invitation to this event, and thank you to those who are watching. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to tell you more about myself and why I believe I am uniquely qualified to advocate for your families on the Board of Education. Prior to raising my family, I was an elementary educator in the public schools and a special educator at the elementary, secondary, and post-secondary level. I worked with a range of diverse students needing a wide variety of support services. My family began our journey through the Port Schools in 2004. Since then, my three children have attended all three levels of our schools as three individual learners. I have been an active volunteer at every step of the way, starting when I served as an educator in the outreach program at the Parent Resource Center. At each stage, my work has focused on enhancing parent engagement as research shows a direct link between student success and the parent-school partnership. In 2015, I grew concerned about state and national policies that narrowed our curriculum and placed an undue emphasis on high-stakes testing rather than educational best practices. I joined forces with three other parents to establish Port Washington Advocates for Public Education, and our work led to substantive changes in district policy and practices that were better for all children. I continue my advocacy today as a member of the district's Vision and Mission Committee and as co-president of AGATE. My work has led to increased staffing for enrichment, enhanced professional development, improved access to Spanish language interpretation at parent meetings, and strengthened parent engagement with the school district. What I am most proud of is that I didn't do any of it alone. Following my teaching instincts, I established trust, asked questions, engaged with the community in the district, and through partnership and collaboration was able to arrive at solutions and make change. This is what I will continue to do if I have the privilege of serving as your Board of Education trustee. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you're next.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Smith, and I would like to thank AGATE for hosting this forum and allowing us the opportunity to speak to the community. I'm running for school board trustee because we deserve a more proactive board that prioritizes and delivers educational excellence. I've been a proud Port Washington resident for the past 10 years, living in Soundview with my wife, Jenny, and our three children. We have a Guggenheim second grader, a rising kindergartner, and a rising preschooler. For the past 16 years, I've been a real estate professional managing complex projects from inception to completion. I have expertise in management, finance, facilities, budgeting, construction management, and working with various government agencies. I also serve as a board member for a local religious institution where I spearheaded the implementation of physical security measures, secured federal funding, instituted an emergency operations plan, and most recently guided our COVID response team through building closures and reopenings. I was also instrumental in ensuring a strong virtual presence for our congregation and preschool since the first days of the lockdowns. The board's lack of transparency and indecision was made evident during the COVID-19 response. No one could have predicted COVID-19, and it's hard to say with 100% certainty what decisions were right or wrong, but I do know with 100% certainty that putting undue stress on families by making vague, sometimes conflicting announcements and constant last-minute changes was not the correct approach. Transparency and communication are particularly important now to steer our district to its best potential future. We have wonderful teachers and a diverse and vibrant community, but we cannot ignore facts. And the fact is, our reputation as a school district has been declining nationally, especially as compared to our North Shore neighbors. I encourage you to do the research. Visit my Facebook page where I lay it all out, or message me directly to discuss it, because the trends are disturbing and need to be reversed. I'm the type of person who could not ignore a problem once I've identified it. Whether professionally, personally, or as a board member, I face problems head on with extensive research, questioning of assumptions, laser focus, and most importantly, informed, decisive action. I'm the person you want fighting for your kids and your community, and I hope you will give me the chance to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you, Rebecca. Many of you know me, so I'm not going to spend too much time getting into my background, although I will say I am actually visiting with my father, who was born and raised in Port Washington, and we were discussing my grandfather, who was also born and raised in Port Washington, and some of the people that he grew up with that happen to still be in town. So I am a Port Washington resident at heart, by birth, by generation, by all of that. And this community is what I care about. And the kids have always been my priority. Like Ms. Melconian, I'm a special education teacher by trade. I spent my early career years working with autistic children. And then I had my children. And unfortunately, as many of us can attest to who worked in the special education world, salaries did not compete with daycare costs for special education teachers back in the late 90s. And so I chose to raise my children. I have brought 3 children through the school district, the last graduating in the midst of the pandemic of 2020. And they were 3 distinct learners. I had, one who was a very classic advanced learner, one who was a child who struggled with some learning disabilities, and one who was a very true to every sense of the word 2E kid. And they were all 3 very successful in the Port Washington School District. They were well served. And I learned a lot about all of the programs that we offer here. In 2015, I decided to run for the board, and I have been serving ever since. We have been quite open, I believe. I watched Ms. Johnson answer not 150 emails over a year, 150 emails sometimes in a week. At the height of the COVID pandemic. I'm grateful to her for doing that, because in my other world of volunteering, I serve on the volunteer ambulance company, fire medic company #1 of the Port Washington Fire Department. And my time was spent actually attending to the immediate needs of our community for emergency medical services. The COVID pandemic has been unusual, but the experience that the 3 of us have will be what takes us through and gets us to the other side. So we ask for your vote.
Thanks. Okay, now we're going to go with the questions. And the first question is, what do you think the biggest capital needs in the district are? And I'm going to go, as I said, starting with second person alphabetically. So I'm going to start with Mr. Greenstein. Got that right, I think. So what do you think the biggest capital needs in the district are?
Boy, that's a good one. We have so many capital needs. I mean, we're in the midst of a bond issue, which will take care of a good deal of our space issues and hopefully seal our envelopes, as Mr. Ristano likes to say. I do think we need to do more with technology. We need to do more with science equipment. We need to do more with just about anything you can blame. We have always underfunded our facilities in order to get more programming and get more teaching in and get more and give more direct stuff to the students. And basically anything you can name, we can do. We need to do. I don't think there's a single part of the district that couldn't use improvement. We are currently expanding Schreiber. We're working. Our bond issue is taking care of all of our buildings are getting some improvements. Could they have been more? Could they be better? Yes, we're going to have STEAM labs in every elementary school when we're done. Which is going to be a big improvement. And I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, you are next.
Okay, thanks for that question. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that we did do the 2015 bond, and the work is still being done. And that is doing many capital improvements right now. There's expansions, as Mr. Greenstein said, new esteem labs, there's new auditoriums. So we do have some beautiful, we have a new music suite at Weber. We have the turf fields that are fantastic. But, you know, even though it's $70 million, it's a big school district and a lot of the buildings are just older. You know, you could put new extensions on, but there are just some older buildings. One thing that came up at the teacher debate just the other day is that a lot of the classrooms, and I believe it was a Weber teacher who was speaking, but it probably could have applied to one of the older sections of the Schreiber too, although Weber has some really old sections, is that they are, you know, looking up at the ceiling and there are cracks in the ceiling, and there are, you know, she said that her walls hadn't been patched in a while. So I think we need a lot of smaller capital improvements to the infrastructure itself. I agree that the infrastructure in terms of, we always need more work on technology, because technology, we're keeping up with it, but you know, technology keeps moving forward. So we constantly have to add to that part of our infrastructure. We need, I'd say we need more. I'm trying to think of some specifics. I mean, I think in general, we need more capital improvements. We do have a 5-year plan and a state of the building work that is going to be done that we just discussed at our last budget meeting. I'd have to look at that more specifically, but there is a plan to continuously improve things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melconian, you are next. I'll repeat it. What do you think the biggest capital needs in the district are?
Thank you. So obviously the annual conversation is our roofs. It's an incredibly expensive project that needs constant maintenance. I know there was a conversation this year about a potential bond that was decided against. So that will be an ongoing conversation, I would expect. Asbestos abatement and review is also something that the board has been looking at, as well as mentioned already, maintaining our technical needs in the classrooms, and overall general maintenance. As a very large school district with 7 buildings, just the general expenses to maintain those buildings in a safe and healthy manner is expensive. Heating, ventilation, and cooling is something that needs to be maintained, as well as electric. And all of this should really encompass a 5-year plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith, your turn.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think actually my fellow candidates said a lot of what I would say are the needs that we have, but obviously we have an aging school district. If you go through any of the buildings, it's in a lot of ways like stepping into a time capsule, and you can see that there's just tremendous amounts of deferred maintenance. You know, we know about the leaking roofs, we know about the sports fields that are soggy at all of the elementary schools. We know about, many classrooms not having electricity because there's inadequate many classrooms not having air conditioning because there's not adequate electricity. So, you know, maybe one classroom of a grade has air conditioning and another one doesn't because you can't power the air conditioner. We need better IT connectivity. There's security upgrades that are needed. If you look at any of the schools this year and you look at the access control systems, all of the doors were wide open during dismissal and pickup. Because we don't have state-of-the-art access control systems on the doors. So I think that there's tremendous amounts of capital improvement that we could do at the buildings at every level. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Weisberg next.
Thank you. I'm not going to get into too much detail about what's been spoken about, but I have chaired the Budget and Facilities Committee for the last 6 years, and we've been making strides at getting all of this work done. Unfortunately, we did have a two superintendents ago that chose to not invest in our buildings and facilities, and that has left us in a place that we have been playing catch up since Dr. Mooney took over and since Jim Rostano took over, and so those things have been, slowly being worked on. However, in an environment with a tax cap, it's a little difficult to do big chunks. However, I am happy to report that at the last meeting, when we did discuss roofs, or the last few meetings, Mr. Restano has made it pretty clear that we're on a good trajectory with the roofs, and we're pretty close to having finished and updated our roofs with ones that will last significantly longer than the ones that they chose to put on before. And to make a very long story short, that was a bond that got cut short, and somewhat shoddy work was definitely accepted for the roofs, and they've been replaced with roofs that will have much longer warranties and a much better outcome for the district. Mr. Restano has focused on doing work in his tenure here that will be long lasting and functional for significant periods of time, as opposed to some of the cheaper and quick fix stuff that have been done in the past. So we are pretty close to sealing those buildings. Between the roofs, the windows, the doors, the security work for the most part is in the bond. So as schools get their bond work done, those doors will be, will have those state of the art. Well, the doors at Schreiber do, the doors at Weber will be finished with all of that work as they're being replaced. So all of that stuff is sort of in the trajectory of work that's coming. And we'll continue to have bathrooms and roofs and windows and doors that need to be replaced, just like you will at your home. It will be a cycle, but the building condition survey is done and it will be redone in another year or two, and we'll keep following that.
Thanks. And Dr. Block, you are next.
Thank you. So two things. One is roofs. What happened at Guggenheim a couple of years ago was sort of shocking to me. It was something that you expected to see on television, not in Port Washington. So I think making sure, and I saw in some of the budget meetings this year, the state of some of the roofs, and I think we are now slowly taking care of it. But if I had to do one capital improvement, it would be make sure that our roofs are up to date so that we never have these major leaks again. And then the second thing, if we had a little bit more opportunity, would be improving the air conditioning, because I think not just the kids. First, we have global warming, so every year gets a little bit warmer in September and a little bit warmer in June, and not just for our kids, but certainly for our kids, but also for our teachers who have to be up there in front of the class teaching to the entire class all day, and this year in masks. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The next question. Much of the work of the BOE is performed at the committee level. For incumbents, tell us about why you're on the committee you are on, what you enjoy about it, and what you bring to it. For non-incumbents, please tell us which committee you would like to join and what you would bring to it. And for this question, we are going to start with Ms. Johnson.
Okay, thank you. I've been an officer for the last 5 or 6 years, and I haven't actually on every committee, but as an ex officio member. But the work that I actually did the most committee work on was the policy committee when I first started on the board. And I enjoyed that very much. I'm an attorney by profession. And although when you come to the board, you're not an attorney per se, you're not a doctor per se, you're not a real estate person per se, but some of that is in your DNA. And it was interesting for me to go through our policies and, with the committee and update them, because sometimes some of the older policies really did need to be updated. So I did quite a bit of policy work, including the code of conduct, which took a very long time. And that's actually one of the things that we're really going to be looking into now, once again, because some of the things that are in there are very much outdated at this point, and we'll be looking towards, say, restorative justice as opposed to suspensions in many cases. So that's one piece. In terms of other committees, I go to all of the committees, and I like the budget committee because, of course, I want to stay on top of the budget. And likewise, the curriculum committee is very interesting as well. I've chaired the diversity committee for, co-chaired, I should say, with the wonderful outgoing Shirley Sapiro, who is our director of ENL. I co-chaired that committee with her for a number of years. And we got a very interesting cross-section of staff members and community members, and we would talk about different issues that were relevant. One year we focused on LGBTQ issues. The last 2 years, we focused more on our Latinx community. We're really waiting to see with that committee how the equity work with NYU Metro, where that leads us before moving forward with the diversity committee, because we would like to bring those two together. And that committee should augment the NYU Metro work going forward.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Melconian, you're next.
Thank you. I 100% am passionate about the curriculum committee. It encompasses my experience as an educator. It encompasses my experience with my 3 children at all levels of the schools, as well as my experience in working with AGATE. I understand many of the strengths and weaknesses of our programming. I have proven my ability to work with that committee as a trusted parent in the community. I'm trusted by the administrators and by the teachers, and the success that I have achieved so far. I have plenty more plans in the works, but I have been able to accomplish a review of the honors projects in English and social studies. I have introduced the core extension review, as what, not just myself, but through the work of myself and many of the family members in our community, and the homework policy. So these are things that I'm very proud of, and I hope to continue to work on more of it if I become a board member.
Thank you. And next is Mr. Smith.
Great. I think one of the positive outcomes of all the changes we've had to make this year with the pandemic is that all of the committee meetings have been live streamed through Zoom or YouTube. So all of the community has had an opportunity, including myself, someone who's at work usually 9 to 5, has actually had the opportunity to watch all of these committee meetings happening in real time. And I've taken the advantage to watch most of them this year. And I would have to say that while many of them I find very interesting, would love to sit on, definitely for me, the number one would be the Budget and Facilities Committee. My core competencies, and I understand that, as a board member, it's not necessarily your expertise, but as Ms. Johnson said, it is what's in your heart. My core competencies are budget and facilities, and with all of the renovation work that needs to happen over the next several years relating to the already issued bond and the other items that we talked about, I think that there's going to be tremendous need over the next several years, to work with the staff and the administration to get through these upcoming construction projects, particularly as some of the projects that Ms. Weisberg referred to are already going through their second round of bidding now after not being awarded successfully the first time. Just because, as Ms. Weisberg said at the most recent budget meeting, there's been tremendous increase in construction costs. Materials are up. Some of them are up, over 200% from when that bond was issued. So there's going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties and a lot of adjustments and maneuvers that are going to have to be made, and compromises and solutions found over the next several years to get through all of these renovations that need to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And if we need a reminder what the question is, for incumbents, tell us about why you're on the committees you're on and what you enjoy about it and what you bring to it. For non-incumbents, tell us which committee you'd like to join and what you would bring to it. And the next one is Ms. Weisberg.
Well, in my 6-year tenure, I've served on all of the committees that we have. The one that I believe is the most important is the Budget and Facilities Committee. Change at our level comes primarily from our direction of the budget. It is sort of the power of the purse is always, a significant thing in government. And it is the one thing that we sort of do have some control over. I say some because we have certainly a pile of contracts and mandates from the state and other things. So we have some control over the budget. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7% is discretionary. And when I say discretionary, I mean like paper and pens and supplies for school. The rest is all contractually obligated. But the Budget and Facilities Committee has given us the ability to put more money, for example, into professional development, help target things like the vision, mission, and equity work and say, you know what, that is stuff we're going to fund. That is stuff that's important to the board. So those kinds of things in that way are places where we can have an effect on the schools. You know, we hear a lot of talk about how the board members and the Board of Education can run the school district. Well, we govern the school district. We don't run the school district. And that's an important distinction. And the budget is probably the one thing that does fall under our primary responsibility. And so I really do enjoy being able to do sort of that first person work rather than the second or third person work that some of the other committees are.
All right, thank you. Dr. Block, you are next.
So this is a great question. So I'm an active teacher, so I think it's pretty natural that I'd want to be on the curriculum committee. I write curriculum, I grade papers. I was grading papers yesterday. I was grading tests the day before that, and I was teaching class at this time 2 weeks ago. So I would definitely want to be on the curriculum committee. In addition, one of the reasons that I'm running is because that we have seen a drop in some of the metrics across our school, the school rankings. And I think the way to improve our excellence is through the curriculum committee. The other way is that the curriculum needs budget. And I am an economist by training. That is what my degree is in. And so I have written many, many budgets across my career, starting with ones at the congressional level and all the way down to port skis for 20 sets of skis. So I am experienced in writing budgets. It's what I do. I'm a magician on Excel. So those are the two ones that I would love to be a part of.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein, you are next.
Yeah, so I've been on every committee that we've ever had over my tenure. Right now, I serve on the curriculum committee, which I've chaired for many years. It's sort of my passion. That's what I think we need to do. I think we need to look at it. My two kids had very different experiences in the schools. They both had special needs. One of them was twice exceptional. And, you know, we've seen them I've seen the school be successful, and I've seen the school be an incredible failure. And so I think, you know, my goal has always been to make sure that we can meet the needs of all the children. And the best way to do that is through the curriculum committee. One of the things I think, you know, one of the biggest changes we've made is hiring our new superintendent, who has a very progressive view of education, which is very much, I agree with his philosophy more than I've agreed with anybody else's philosophy, you know, in my tenure. And I think that that's going to bring us forward. I do, you know, I look at those rankings and I say, gee, what determines those rankings? Those rankings in some ways are determined by test scores. Those rankings in some way are determined by kids who take AP courses. Those rankings are not necessarily the way I think our school should be ranked. Where do we stand on the happiness level? Where do we stand on the satisfaction? Where do we stand on making good adults, not just automatons who, you know, can test well? So I'm not sure that falling in the rankings is necessarily a bad thing. The other committee that I'm really proud of serving on is the NYU Metro Committee, because it is a real strong goal of this board to ensure equity and diversity, and that is a great committee with all sorts of stakeholders in it. And we're really doing the work, and it is really, really difficult work. It really makes you stop and makes you think and makes you examine everything you're doing. And I must say the educators on that committee are just really wonderful in how they are looking at their own actions and their own work and saying, okay, how can we be better? And so that's a great committee to be on.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so our next question has to do with equity, which is kind of related to what you're saying. Equity has been used a lot in the campaigns. How do you define equity in education? What are the hurdles in Port to get there? What can a board member, not a superintendent or the teachers, but what can a board member do? We are going to start with Ms. Melconian for this one. Thanks.
Thank you. So there's hurdles. There will be hurdles in terms of acknowledging and understanding what the recommendations are and how they can be implemented in our school district. Will there be budgetary implications? Will there be professional development and curricular implications, hiring implications? All of those things need to be accepted and embraced. And then a plan and a vision for implementation needs to be made. So it also needs to be about whether or not the district truly wants to do what is being recommended and has really decided that it will take a long, hard look at itself and decide to make changes where they are needed. So I'm looking forward to how the district approaches that. I would like to be a leader in how the district approaches that. I am interested in seeing our language access can be improved in the district. And I would like to see our school culture improved. It will be at the forefront of things that I'd like to see get done. I'm hearing families that are concerned about how they feel in terms of being welcome in our schools. And that has to do with our staff and our students and the general climate that needs to improve. And I would like to make sure that we have some plans in place and we take this very seriously.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you are next.
Thank you. Great question. So, equity has been one of the highlights of our campaign. It's been on a lot of our signs. It's on our literature. To me, equity means that everybody in this district is accounted for and has their needs served to the best ability possible of the district. That means that our underserved populations have the access that they need to assistance with technology, access to language, outreach into communities to make sure that everyone's getting the services that they need. It means that our special ed students are being taken care of and that resources and staff development is going towards serving those communities. It means that we have support for working parents who are working 2 jobs, maybe at home or in the city, and need to figure out how to get additional childcare and don't want to win the lottery for Kidsport. It means that kids who are bound for UPenn have the opportunities that would get them to be able to get into those schools. It means creating relationships with admissions departments at universities in order to ensure that all of our students who are college bound have the opportunity to have the opportunities that are available to similar students in other districts. It means ensuring that excuse me, basically, to me, equity means that we focus on every single group in this community and make sure that everybody is getting served equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weisberg. I'm actually going to put the question in the chat instead of keep repeating it, or so people can see it. Okay, Ms. Weisberg, you're next.
Thank you, Rebecca. So for me, the word, am I losing my, for me, the word equity is most easily defined by the picture we've all seen on Facebook of the people trying to look over the fence, right? And equality would be giving them all a box, the same box, and equity would be giving them each the box that they needed to be able to see over the fence. So at the end of the day, to me, that's the sort of visual for me for equity. It's ensuring that everybody has that same starting point, that everybody has that same access, that everybody will be able to best use what's given to them in order to improve and embrace their education. That is, to me, the definition of equity, especially when it comes to education. What we can do as a board, it's what we did. We hired a superintendent who believes in this passionately. And the change and the work that has begun is already evident. Within less than 2 years of employment, the superintendent has brought a consultant in. The work has begun. He has focused on all of the equity issues that we have. That's what we can do. We can ensure that we have the staff who will place this as a priority for the district. And on the flip side, we can ensure that we fund the things that they ask us to fund in order to get us to that place of equity. Ensure that we fund things like translators and language access points and other things like that, amongst many others, a laundry list of things that make the schools more equitable. So, the work that we did, what that I think was the most important was to hire a superintendent who would place this at the forefront of the work that the school district would do over the next few years of his tenure.
Thank you. Okay. Dr. Black, you are next.
It's a great question. So let me just first start by asking a question, which is how much are we paying the equity consultant? Okay, so public education is the great equalizer, I believe. However, I think that what we do in the theory of equity actually contradicts what the goals are. So I'll give you an example. Scarsdale Elementary School has about 20 clubs for its kids. Why don't we have 20 clubs for our kids? Well, because this district as a policy doesn't allow clubs that aren't funded, doesn't allow clubs that aren't free. So we have to raise the budget a lot. Now, what Scarsdale does is it says, we're going to charge a little fee for these clubs. Most of the kids in Scarsdale, just like most of the kids in Port Washington, can pay a fee, right? And you can actually subsidize the folks that can't pay it. Instead, what we do is we have basically 0 clubs. And as a result, who gets to go to after-school activities? Kids who have the money to go pay private companies to do it. The school could do it much more cheaply and much more efficiently, and it would actually create a later pickup time, which is really beneficial for working parents. So while we talk about equity, we are not actually living equity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Greenstein, you are next.
Okay, well, Beth stole my thing about the boxes. Equity is not equality. Equity is putting the resources where they're needed in targeted ways to make sure that that everybody does have equal opportunity and an equal level playing field. What the board can do about it is what the board has done about it. We've hired somebody who passionately believes in it. We have policy that is strongly encouraging of it. We're actually continuing to review that policy. We are looking at hiring. Our hiring is very important. The board ultimately has to approve every hiring decision. It doesn't mean we do the interviews or we pick the people out, but we get the final say on whether or not the person is hired. And the administration knows what our thoughts are. And we've been very good at bringing in a more diverse faculty, which helps with some aspects of equity, because people have a better chance if they see somebody like them of becoming more engaged and staying in and being more successful rather than feeling like they're an outcast. I think the work that we're doing, the vision and mission work, is really the heart and soul of everything that we're doing. The vision and mission work is going to change fundamentally the way we meet the needs of a lot of students, probably all of our students. And the whole goal of that, at the direction of the board and the superintendent, is to make our district more equitable. If you look at our graduation rates, our less economically advantaged students have been graduating at a lower rate than everybody else, and that rate has been slipping. They've been we have not been keeping up over the past 4 or 5 years, and that is something that the board is very aware of, and the board is trying to address. Things do not turn around on a dime in education. You can't just wave a magic wand and say, okay, everybody's good now. You start at the very beginning and you work and you build it up slowly, and you get where you're going.
Thank you. And next we have Ms. Johnson. You are next.
Thank you. I think Ms. Weisberg said it best, what I was going to say, and it is equity means that everyone can see over that fence that you described in that graphic that's so popular now. And everyone, if you need 2 boxes, you stand in 2 boxes to see over the fence. If you need 3 boxes, you get 3 boxes to see over the fence. But every child has to be able to see over the fence and get the opportunities that many of them are currently lacking. And it's true, we hired a superintendent who is very passionate about equity, and we're very proud of that. And I'm proud that I, with him, championed the work that we are currently doing with NYU Metro. In case Dr. Black really doesn't know, the work cost about $40,000. More than half of it was funded by a very generous grant from the Ed Foundation. Equity, when I say it, when I've used it, because I've used it in my campaign, I'm focusing on our underserved minorities. I'm concentrating on our Black, our Brown students, our ENL students, our special ed students, our LGBTQ students, and others. And the reason we do this is not only to give them greater opportunity to close that opportunity gap, we do that for all our students because this is the world we live in. We live in a world that has many different types of people that are coming from many different places and have many different needs. And another thing about equity is that we're trying to end the disproportionality, or at least to reduce the disproportionality. And it does show up. It shows up in graduation rates. It shows up in participation in our gifted and talented programs. We've done more diverse hires. I'm not sure what clubs at the elementary school have to do with equity, but there certainly are clubs at our middle school and at the high school. And if and when we can afford, and that's the community's will, we will go back to having clubs at the elementary school. And I just want to add, like, equity. Okay, I'll add it to another.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think you were last on that one. Okay, next question. Some candidates have kids who are younger in the district and others have kids who have graduated. How can you stay in touch with the daily reality of kids in grades your kids have not yet reached or grades your kids have not been in for some time? And for this question, we are going to start with Mr. Smith.
Sure. So, I have one child currently. He's a rising third grader, I guess you would say. So I feel that most of the people in our network are elementary students. I have two children behind, so I will be an elementary parent if I'm elected, at least through this board term. I will also be having a student soon to go to, my son will be in Weber in several years and Schreiber soon after that. So the success of Weber and Schreiber is critically important to me. Over the last few months since I've been running for board, I've had the opportunity to meet with many, many, many parents, Weber and Schreiber, who have reached out to me. And, that's one thing I do is I stay in touch. I love to talk to people. I love to hear what they have to say. I've reached out to many people on Facebook who have made comments and asked to meet with them privately. And, we spent half an hour walking through one of the parks or down the street. And I feel like, being in touch is it's what I do. And I just don't see that, myself having only elementary kids is really any problem at all in terms of staying in touch with all of the schools in the district. That's one of the main reasons why I decided to run, is because I actually have kids in the district and will do so, continue to do so for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg, you are next.
Thank you, Rebecca. This is the first year on the board that I didn't have a child in the school district, but I do have three nieces who live 3 doors down from me, and they are one is in Schreiber and two are at Weber, and they just finished at Salem. So I haven't really been out of touch. I've been with them while they've been doing their virtual schoolwork and all that stuff throughout, elementary school, middle school, and high school last year, and the same this year. That said, I'm out in the community all the time. I see parents, I see families. I am talking to people in the grocery store. I'm talking to people in the back of an ambulance. I have found it pretty easy to stay in touch with those elementary school families. I continue to volunteer at the schools. I worked on costumes for the high school musical this year, even though I didn't have a student there. So you can certainly continue to stay in touch if you choose to. You can continue to be involved. You can continue to show up to events. You can continue to talk to parents. This is a small community. Port Washington has long history and long roots of being a community. This is not just a town to live in. And I think as a community, people discuss their issues with you all the time. Somebody rolled down their window the other day and waved at me in the ambulance, and I rolled down the ambulance window, and she just wanted to tell me that, her son was so excited that going back to middle school, and, thank you so much for all of the hard work we did this year. That staying in touch just comes from being present in the community, and it will continue to come.
Thank you. Next is Dr. Block.
So first, I'm sad that Coach Renna is not here because he talks to high school kids and junior high school kids and elementary school kids every day. That is like literally what he does, and it is what he is doing right now. It's the reason that he's not here. So he certainly has his finger on the pulse of the community better than most. For me, I have my younger kids who by the end of this term will be in Weber. So I will theoretically during the term have Weber and Salem. But because I certainly don't have eyes everywhere, I actually ask kids. So I had there was a student that came over today who is going to distribute from flyers. If there is ever a way to get out flyers for the Board of Education, it is paying junior high school and high school students to distribute them for you. The board will probably tell me that that goes against some regulation that I've never heard of, but that's how I do it. And so I asked them, what's it like? How is Weber? How is Schreiber? What are the classes like? What are you upset about? What the Schreiber student told me today, she said, I'm a graduating senior. I'm really excited to get back to school, but they haven't done enough to recognize the fact that we're seniors and we're not going back and make it different for us. We can't have a prom. We can't have a normal graduation. They should really do something. And they said the same thing last year. And the board, I remember, or the administration promised something, and then it was supposed to happen in August. I'm not quite even sure if it did. So I talk to people, I reach out to them. I talk to the kids.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mr. Greenstein.
Okay. I know, we still keep in touch with families who have kids in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And having been through it, when I hear what's going on with them, I get to say, okay, gee, to myself, are we making the progress that we want? Is it the way we've wanted to move since my kids were there, or do we still have work to do there? So it gives you a good perspective. The thing about not having kids in school is I don't prioritize one group against another group because I don't have a sports kid there, so I don't have to prioritize sports. I don't have a special ed kid, so I don't have to prioritize special ed. I have the independence to look at all of the needs of all of the groups and try to do the correct balancing act of them to make sure that everybody gets their need, which goes back to the equity issue. There are in BOCES also, we oversee programs pre-K through high school in like 12 schools. So I meet with board members all the time from different districts. We discuss best practices. We know what works in districts, where districts are struggling. We help each other out. So I do have a vast knowledge of what goes on, not only in Port, because Port is not the only school district in the world, and every answer does not lie in Port. Sometimes we can't actually learn from other people. And so I intend to continue to do that and continue to bring the resources that I have from outside into Port to make Port a better school district.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, you are next.
Thanks. What I was going to finish off with last time is that what I'd like to do for equity is take down that fence so nobody has to stand on any boxes. But in answer to this question, I want to say that generally speaking, I don't think you can understand what goes on at Weber and Schreiber until you have actually had children who experience those schools. And, distributing, paying students to distribute your campaign literature and asking them how to go today at school, to me, is not experiencing those schools and understanding. In fact, I think it's very typical for elementary school parents, and I don't mean this offensively to anybody because I was one at one time too, but I think it's very typical for elementary school parents not to understand the needs of Schreiber and Weber students. And I've seen that as an HSA co-president, and I've seen that at different meetings that I've attended to. I think it's normal, but I don't think it's good generally, I think it's not good for a board member. I would also say that as far as myself, I have neighbors, I have friends, I go out and about also, I speak to the people in the community, I talk to parents all the time. And I think that my kids being out of the district, although having been there relatively recently, it makes me a better board member because, like I say, I don't have an agenda. I genuinely care about every one of our 52 or 5,300 plus students. And it's not necessary to have a child in the school at this moment in time to understand and communicate and do the work that's necessary to deliver the best education possible to every single student in the district.
Thank you. Ms. Melconian, you are next.
Thank you. So first, I would like to say that I'm the only candidate that has a student at the secondary level who's been impacted by this pandemic year. So it is very personal to me that I am very aware of the struggles that have occurred both academically and social and emotionally. I am the one with the most current experience with children in the district at all 3 levels. I also have teaching experience at all 3 levels and then beyond at the secondary level. So I have a very long view of our schools and what they provide and where their strengths and weaknesses are. I also have a plan this week to have a meet and greet with students that were organized by students, and I'm very excited to speak with them. And I am a little confused because I thought my senior was going to have a graduation and a prom. So I'm not really sure what the misunderstanding is there. I guess I'll investigate and do what I always do, which is ask questions.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, in elementary, middle, and/or high school, do you think there are areas the curriculum could better serve advanced learners? What are those areas, and what are some proposals you think the administration should put before the board to help fix it? So it's an advanced learner, it is AGATE, so we have an advanced learner question. And the first, who's next to go on this one? I think we have Ms. Weisberg. I think you are the first to go on this one.
Thank you. Nanette, I'm just going to answer that question. You're absolutely correct. At the fundraiser that I had donated to for the gamble the other day, I certainly found out that the gamble is set. The dates are set, the times are set. So you are correct about that. That email I just found in my email address that went to all senior parents. So there is a gamble ready to go. That said, I believe that the biggest issue we have right now with our advanced learners is that we're not finding them. And I think that the thing that we need to figure out how to do better is to identify who those advanced learners are, who those truly gifted kids are that need enrichment. And it may not be classic enrichment. It may not be math. It may not be science. It may be in the arts. It may be in many, many different areas. However, I think that the critical piece for us and the piece that I think the 3 of us as board members have been seeking for years is to figure out how come the faces of our district are not represented in our programs for advanced learners. You do not see the same rainbow of people in our programs for advanced learners that you do in our general classrooms. And so my goal is to help figure out how to find and identify those students better in ways that take down those barriers, in ways that stop kids from not being identified because they can't see over the fence. That's my first goal. You have to start somewhere, and that's goal number 1. And it has been for as long as we've been discussing this, since the Van Tassel report, and we will continue to have that conversation tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Block, yes, you are next.
Okay, so I was just reporting back what I heard from a senior today that I spoke to just a couple of hours ago. So I don't know if this is a new change or whether she wasn't aware about it. If I was going to do something more than debate about it, I would certainly try to find out if there really was going to be one rather than relying on one person. But so I want to talk about, even though we said that somehow because I have elementary school kids, I couldn't possibly know about Weber or Schreiber, I do want to talk about Weber and Schreiber. Actually, I'm going to talk mostly about Schreiber. I think the research programs are great. I know because I was a member of one and my wife was a member of another one. She says that the research program at Schreiber is what got her into biology and what is the reason that she became a doctor. So what I would try to do is expand some of those programs because I remember they were incredibly competitive. And so while everybody was talking about that some of us don't really understand what it's like to have a high schooler, I was a high schooler at Schreiber and I was a junior high schooler at Weber, and so was my wife. So we do have experience with this as well as the current elementary school experience. So I think I would expand those. And also I think there's an opportunity. What I'm seeing right now when I interview medical school students is I'm seeing on the job, a lot more on the job experience and learning than people have had in the past. And so what I think we need at the high school level is an opportunity for internships. I think that the community that I've seen in Port is incredibly rich in terms of occupational experiences. And I think a lot of the folks would be interested in having a high school student because it would support the community. So I think there are opportunities to explore there that would give students the ability to improve their resume for getting into college and just get a feel for what working is really like.
Next is Mr. Greenstein.
Okay, good question. The problem is, as some of my colleagues have brought up, is there are all different kinds of advanced learners. There's all different kinds of talent. There's all different kinds of giftedness. And we need better ways to find the people and to provide programs for them. Do we have programs in the elementary school for gifted musicians? Do we have programs in the high school for people who are socially gifted? Everybody has a certain degree of giftedness, and what we really need to be doing is, my goal has always been to give every student an IEP. And for those of you who don't know, that's an individual education program, and it's used in special education to make sure students get what they want. I'd like to see that expanded to everybody. I do think, we sort of look at enrichment and we look at acceleration, but I do think there are many other opportunities to give advanced learners the stimulation that they need and the social and emotional supports that they need, because also it's very lonely when you're one of very few people who can be at a certain level. And certainly, I think that is a big part of it. And I think supporting the social and emotional needs of advanced learners is as important as fulfilling their academic needs or their other needs. And I think the two of them go hand in hand. And that's why I'm glad we're looking at that. It also sound like a broken record. It ties into the vision and mission. We want to know what we want a graduate to look like. We want to know what they do. We want to know what they support, and we want it to be equitable. We want everybody to have it. And just while I have 10 seconds, the research program is one of the least equitable programs that we do have, because the reality is everybody needs the private contacts to get a mentor, to get a good project going. We don't really have the resources to reach out to some members of the community and get them involved in this program, even though they'd probably be quite capable and able to do it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, you're next.
Thank you. I agree with much of what Beth and Larry said, and I want to say that I think we definitely have to find better ways to define giftedness, to define talent, the way we're saying gifted and talented. And I think we need to have better ways to find those students. Right now, we have a good PEP program, and I'm not suggesting that we change it. It is being restored for those of you that are concerned. But while we were pivoting off it, we had these special enrichment, the specials rather, that were enrichment classes that we're using our PEP teachers taught, and those worked very well. And it's not my call, even as a board member or board president, but I'd like to see a discussion about whether or not we can continue that type of enrichment push into all the students at the elementary level the way we did during this last crisis, when we all go back in. I think that Beth is absolutely right. Our minorities are underrepresented in all of our advanced programs at every level. And there's also a question of what is gifted and talented, which I mentioned at first. And there's so many theories about that. I don't profess to know the answer, but that's why we have the professionals and the educators. The research program, which has come up, is actually, it's a good program, but as Larry said, very inequitable. not only because people don't have contact, we don't have enough contacts with outside experts that the students can work with and do their research projects with, but because there's only 10 kids in each group. It's a very elite group. And if it were up to me, which it's not, because as I say, I'm not one of the educators, but I would like to see a consideration of expanding the research program so that more students can get this extremely important skill. And I speak from knowledge too. I wasn't in the research program because I wasn't here, but 2 of my kids were in the research program.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Melconian, you're next. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. First of all, I would really like to see our district invest and prioritize professional development in this area. I believe that our staff really needs to have a greater understanding of this population and what their needs are, both academically and social and emotionally, as they will be in their classrooms and will need some real guidance in that area. I would like to see a consideration of a particular look at the models that could be applied K-3 before PEP begins, in terms of how we can meet the needs of these students that are in the regular ed classroom. I would like to see an introduction of accelerated and/or honors options in the humanities at Weber, as well as English honors classes at the high school level. Thank you.
Thank you. And now last we have Mr. Smith.
Thank you. So I'm going to disagree a little bit with some of the incumbents who spoke before me. I'm a little bit confused when they talk about how they're the people who should continue running the school district from the standpoint of equity and helping to make sure that all of our underserved students are getting all of the opportunities that they need. When if you look at the history over the last 5 to 7 years while they've been running the school district, graduation rates for underserved students have gone down. Percentage of underserved students who are proficient by the state measures has gone down. The gap between underserved students and non-underserved students is actually increasing in our district. So I'm not sure how they perceive themselves to be the experts on equity, other than saying that they hire a consultant or hire the best superintendent, to solve this problem. From the standpoint of what we could do to help gifted and talented students, I think that we need to bring back, pull out PEP. We need to increase research. But we need to have more opportunities to really focus on math, foreign language, science, coding. If you watch the board meetings, you don't hear any of those things being talked about. You hear a lot of talk about equity, but you don't see any results in the standpoint of equity. You hear it being talked about, but you don't see anything happening. I think that we need to be talking about academic excellence, and the top will bring the middle up, and it'll bring the bottom up, and everybody will exceed. I see Mr. Greenstein shaking his head, but they've had a long time to prove us wrong, and it's not working. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I know we're getting close to 9, so I'm going to take one. I think came in the email. Last one. Okay. At the previous debate, every candidate acknowledged that hiring, firing, and supervising the superintendent are among the primary responsibilities of a board member. The contract of our current superintendent will be up next year. Can you describe how you'll approach the process of making a decision on whether to renew that contract and for how long? And who do I start with this time? You guys tell me. Who did I start with last time?
You're back to Mr. Block.
I'm back to Mr. Block. Dr. Block, I'm back to you. That's correct. Okay, so I'll try to type it in the chat, but you heard it, right?
No,
okay,
I heard the question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So yes, so first I would want to see, so the board the Board of Education does an evaluation of the superintendent each year. These evaluations are not public, but if I were a board member, I would first review the evaluations that have been done last year and the evaluations that have been done this year. And then, my expectation is that I guess the best analogy is that the superintendent is essentially the CEO of the company, but the board is the board of directors that is in charge. And if I'm elected, I expect that the superintendent would be responsive to the will of the community by electing me or other people and take the direction that the Board of Education basically shifts. So in other words, my expectation is that Dr. Hines would potentially shift a little bit to a vision that is more aligned with what the community has voted for. So that's what I would expect.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
Okay. Well, first of all, as stated before, but some people just can't quite get it through their heads, the Board of Education does not run the school district. We govern the school district, and there is a difference, and words matter, and the point is important. We have a program that called SuperVal, and in it, it's one of the tools we use to evaluate the superintendent. We have goals set out at the beginning of the year, board goals. The superintendent has his goals. We get together around this time of the year and see how he's done versus the goals, how we're moving toward what the board goals are, and we go on from there. Then we have a discussion, and we sit down with him and we discuss where we think he's excelled and where we think he might need some supports, and we go on from there. And the question is, yes, I would renew his contract because I think he is philosophically aligned with the community. I think the bulk of the community wants the kids to be successful and not just care about how well they test. I think the social and emotional aspects of education are more important, and we don't want kids to, a lot of kids bomb out in college because they're so stressed out in high school, and it's their first chance to actually be themselves, and that gets them into trouble. So I think we have to understand the value of play. We have to understand the value of relaxation. We have to understand the value of a lot of things that aren't math and coding. And as a math person, I mean, I know that, but there are other things that are just as important. And anyway, but to get back to the specific answer, I would renew his contract and I would give him a 5-year extension.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson.
As a sitting board member, I really can't discuss like the personal issue of what is specifically going on with Dr. Hines and the renewal of his contract. But I will say that Larry gave a very good overview of the process. We use SuperVal, and we will be working on SuperVal very shortly, and reviewing his input, reviewing our own evaluations of him, and then sitting down with him, the way Mr. Greenstein said. I am also kind of intrigued with Mr. Smith's, since I really can't talk too much more about that, although I would say that I would like to renew his contract. Mr. Smith's trickle up theory on equity is really kind of baffling to me because I don't think it would work, just the way trickle down theory I don't think worked for economics. And I would just like to use this a little bit of time that I have to say that one of the reasons that the rankings in US News and World Report, which is I know one of the issues that our opponents are playing on, one of the reasons that they've changed is because the rankings in 2018 went from ranking 3,000 high schools to ranking over 17,000 high schools. And as US News and World Report itself says, that most rankings went up. So most schools did not fare as well as they did previously because they're in a bigger pool. Nevertheless, I think we still did pretty well. They're also using new measurements, and the measurements include the AP's exam again, the standardized tests again, and they also include the how our underserved minority students are doing. That's about 20% of the rankings. So I think part of the equity work that we're doing now will actually help the ranking improve. So I just wanted to answer that. And that is if you think that the rankings are that important, which I'm not gonna, I'm not really responding to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melconian, you're next.
Thank you. So as someone who has not served on this board, I am not aware of the inner workings of an actual evaluation of a superintendent. So of course I would be learning about the process, and I would also be educating myself in terms of the past evaluations that have already been delivered. I would also be interested in the staff relationship with Dr. Hines, and the how our community is also feeling. I would take all of that along with what I learned as a new member about the criteria and the metrics used, and would analyze all of that and participate with my fellow board members. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Smith.
Hi, I'll just go back first to what Mrs. Johnson was talking about in terms of the drop that we had after US News and World Reports changed its ranking system. We're very clear about that, and we've actually posted on our BOE Facebook pages quite detailed explanations of that change. But just to point out, Manhasset before the change was ranked 177, went to 162. Great Neck South, 195 to 188. Garden City, 157 to 250. Port Washington, 223 to 705. So the change that Port Washington is the only North Shore district that experienced the dramatic drop. And whether you agree with the rankings or not, it matters. Colleges are looking at it, and it's impacting the children of everybody who goes to this district and has aspirations to go to a top college, because whether we're looking at it or not, the colleges are definitely looking at it. In terms of the superintendent, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to speak about personnel issues of an individual, but what I will say is that if I were to be elected to the board, I would like to meet Dr. Hines. I'd like to understand who he is, how he works with the board. And and one of the big things that I've talked about is wanting to put very tangible metrics and KPIs into the performance into the school district. And I would expect that the superintendent would get on board with the will of the board, so to speak. And while we certainly don't run the school district, we do govern this. The board does govern the school district, and the superintendent does answer to the board. And I would expect that the superintendent would be the leader who would bring the school district on a path that would get them hitting the KPIs key performance indicators that the board was expecting the superintendent to hit. And as long as those were being hit, the superintendent would remain. And to the extent that they weren't being hit, we would have to look at why they weren't. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Weisberg, you are last.
Thank
Last
you.
but not least, sorry.
As Larry and Nora both stated, there is a process in place for evaluating our superintendent. We are in the middle of that process, and so I won't really speak in detail about it, except to say that I agree with everything both of them said. It is a very clear and defined process. It has very clear and defined metrics that the superintendent will be evaluated on. Those are goals that are discussed and decided upon between the board and the superintendent at the beginning of the school year, and he is then held to account for the things that we determined he should be at the end of the evaluation process. And so that is exactly how that works. And we go through each metric, each goal that was set, and each subset of that goal, and evaluate how he has performed, each as individuals, and then we do it again collectively as a board. And then it is presented to him, and that is the first process in his contract renewal. And as it is defined in his contract, if you chose to read it, you would see that that is exactly how his contract renewal should be determined. So the contract renewal process, for anybody who's interested, is actually outlined and defined in the superintendent's current contract. So you don't really have to wonder about it. That contract can be accessed by anybody in the community. So in any event, that is the process. That is what we would go through and do, and that is what we will go through and do.
Okay, thank you. So since it is almost 9 and we didn't do closing statements, so we'll keep you a few minutes past 9, I apologize. We'll move on to the closing statements, which is sort of a lightning round because it is a minute each. And since we started with Dr. Block, I'll move down and I will start the closing statements with Mr. Greenstein. Is that good?
Okay, well, thank you for an interesting discussion. The education is a process. It's not a goal. It's not an end. And processes don't change overnight. And so the work that we've been putting in are not necessarily going to give results instantly. In my time on the board, we've had a lot of board members who come on and say, I know how to do this. I run a business. I do this. I do that. you guys are doing it all wrong. And they generally leave after one term when they realize we're not doing it wrong. We're doing it the way it has to be done. There are very prescribed regulations and rules that we need to follow. And the same thing, we've had people who wanted to do balanced zero-based budgeting. We ended up with the same budget. They went through and realized, yes, we're doing it properly. So people on the outside who don't know anything often look at what we're doing and think we're doing it wrong. And it's actually because they don't actually know anything.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, your closing statement.
Okay, thank you again to AGATE for hosting this event and to everyone who took the time and joined us this evening. I want to acknowledge Larry and Beth for their commitment to our school district and their desire to continue serving. We know firsthand how taxing but rewarding this job can be. I'm asking for your vote because we need experience, perspective, and passion for all students and stakeholders, now more than ever. Due to retirement since the COVID crisis started, we have 2 new assistant superintendents, a new treasurer, 2 new directors of guidance, ENL and athletics, and 2 new elementary school principals. This is not a time to bring on inexperienced board members. We need trustees who understand the board's governance role and make policies and tough decisions, knowing that there are no easy fixes. Trustees who listen to the many voices in our district, even the ones who don't speak up for themselves. My promise to you is that I will continue to use my experience and knowledge to help steer this ship through these tumultuous waters and continue setting the course for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melconian, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you again to AGATE for hosting us and to the community for engaging with the issues. This has been a year like no other, so it's no surprise that it is ending with a school board race like no other. 3 incumbents with many years on the board, 3 challengers who are new to educational advocacy, and me, a fresh voice who is also an experienced advocate with a proven track record. Although the 3 incumbents are presenting themselves as a slate, and 3 of the challengers are presenting themselves as a slate, don't be fooled. This is not the way our school board elections work. The truth is that we are 7 individuals running for 3 individual seats, each with their own qualifications, ideas, and temperaments. And it is up to you, the voters, to evaluate us as individuals. As you evaluate me, I think you will see that I am someone who listens, learns, takes action, and makes change. I will only engage in civil discourse. I have and will continue to advocate and deliver for all students.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you again to AGATE for hosting this event. I've been a member of this community for 10 years, a district parent for 3 years, and will be through 2035. And actually, my nieces will be in the district for a few years after that. My entire family is fully invested in the future of these schools and our community. My mother was a special education teacher in Queens for 30 years, so I was raised in an environment where education was prioritized and discussed on a daily basis. While I'm not an educator myself, I have a deep respect and appreciation for the hard work they put in every day, and I know from watching my mother how much teachers care about their students. My first priority is providing the best education possible for all students in the district, and a large part of that is giving our teachers the tools and support they need. Our district, like all districts, has its problems and challenges. Acknowledging we have problems is the first step to fixing them. The board is not focusing on our declining national ranking or prioritizing academic excellence. They talk about their years of experience, during which we have declined by almost all measures. We need to head off this downward trend now before it gets too hard to control. It's been a decade of decline, and the current board has done and said nothing. I've experienced serving as, please come out and vote on May 18th for Adam Smith, Adam Block, and Justin Renna. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Almost went over there.
Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you to AGATE. Thank you for the time that you put in to organize this event. I know it is no small task, having run many school parent events myself. It's not an easy thing to do, so we appreciate your time. I also really want to thank everybody who took the time out there to listen to us today. It's so important to have an engaged community. The schools are only as good as the engagement of the community that they exist in. That is probably one of the true statements I believe for communities, and your engagement is critical to keeping our school district running well. I hope that you all have heard the difference between experience and knowledge versus rumor and innuendo today and in all of the other debates. I hope that it has come across as clear what needs to be done to maintain the excellence that is Port Washington. And I hope you will come out and vote. Please come out and vote. And I hope you will support myself, Larry, and Nora. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Dr. Block. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. So we'll unmute your and we'll start the timer again. Then okay, thanks.
Thank you. So I want to thank AGATE for having us and the voters for watching. The direction of the school board is really in your hands. You're the most informed voters in the community, so please tell your friends. I am certainly ready for change in the board, and I believe the community is too. You see here two very different views of what education should be, and I believe that this board has gone too far in one direction. I do not think what the incumbents are discussing is in line with the goals of the Port Washington community. The way they discuss PEP and research because 100% can't participate is not the solution that the community wants. We need a compromise, but I don't see that on the board. That's why after the rally for 5 days, we asked the board that Justin Renna get a single spot on a single committee, and they said no. I'm a compromiser. I'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. And the board is the mouthpiece of the community, so I look forward to working with the entire community starting July. Remember, this year you have 3 votes. I ask you to vote for all, one or all of Justin Renna, Adam Smith, and me, Adam Block, to create a board that represents this community, one that will listen and one that will act.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for your time at this forum. Civic engagement is great. And thank you everyone for listening. And I ask you to vote on May 18th at Weber Middle School. And thank you guys again for your time. And have a wonderful night. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.